Okay, so what I'm about to tell you is probably the most confusing, chaotic, genuinely disorienting thing I've ever watched unfold on a live sports broadcast. And I say that because usually when you watch First Take or any of these ESPN shows, there's a general direction the conversation is going in, right? Somebody makes a claim, somebody else pushes back, they debate it, they move on. But what happened yesterday was something completely different, something I've never seen before on that network, because ESPN essentially put two of their own insiders on the same screen at the same time, and those two insiders proceeded to directly contradict each other with completely different information from completely different sources about the same exact topic, Tyrese Maxey and the Golden State Warriors. And by the time it was over, nobody in that studio knew what was true. Nobody. Watching at home knew what was true, and the internet was split right down the middle, trying to figure out which insider had the real information. Hey, what's up everyone? Real quick before we get into everything, that like button is literally what determines if this reaches hundreds or thousands of fans. Takes 1 second, but makes a huge impact on the channel's growth. Just smash that like button right now. It's the easiest thing you can do, but honestly, the biggest way to support this content. Every single like pushes this further, so hit it now. And I sat through the entire thing taking mental notes, cross-referencing what each insider said with what I know about the salary cap, about the Warriors front office, about Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s tendencies, about the Sixers situation, and by the end I came to a conclusion about who I think was right, and I'm gonna share that with you. But I want to walk you through the whole thing first, because the experience of watching these two guys go at it in real time was absolutely riveting, and the details matter, because the details are what ultimately tell you who's telling the truth. So here's how it started. First Take comes on, and one of the main topics of the day is the Golden State Warriors offseason, which makes sense because there's a lot going on with that franchise right now. You've got the Steve Kerr coaching situation where reports have been building for weeks that Kerr might be done, whether that's him stepping away or a mutual parting of ways. And you've got names being floated as replacements. Todd Golden, Andre Iguodala, Mike Brown, various assistant coaches from around the league. And the conversation is naturally evolving into what a coaching change would mean for the roster, because a new coach signals a new direction, and a new direction means potentially new players. And Stephen A. and Shannon are debating what the Warriors need to remain competitive, and they're both landing on the same conclusion. The Warriors need a dynamic young guard who can eventually take the torch from Steph Curry. And they start throwing around names, and the name that keeps coming up, the name that both of them seem to agree fits the Warriors system perfectly, is Tyrese Maxey from the Philadelphia 76ers. And they're building a really solid case for it. Maxey's speed, his shooting, his ability to play off screens and make decisions in real time, his pace, his youth, how he could pair with Curry right now and then succeed Curry in the future. And it's a good discussion, substantive basketball analysis from both of them. And then Molly says, we actually have two of our insiders standing by to weigh in on this exact topic. And the screen splits, and on one side you've got Adrian Wojnarowski, Woy, the guy who's been breaking NBA news for years, one of the most connected reporters in the business, and on the other side you've got a reporter who covers the Warriors specifically, somebody who's embedded with that organization day in and day out, who knows the front office dynamics, who talks to the people inside that building on a regular basis, and Molly sets it up perfectly. She says, we've been discussing the possibility of Tyrese Maxey ending up with the Golden State Warriors. What are your sources telling you? And she goes to Woj first. And Woj, with that trademark deadpan delivery of his, says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but this is essentially what he communicated. He says, my sources indicate that the Golden State Warriors and the Philadelphia 76ers have had preliminary but substantive conversations about a deal centered around Tyrese Maxey. These are not just exploratory calls. These are conversations where specific frameworks have been discussed, specific players have been mentioned, and both sides are taking this seriously. I'm told that Mike Dunleavy Jr. has made Maxey his top target for this offseason, and that the Warriors are prepared to offer a significant package to make this happen. This is very much alive, and I would characterize it as closer to happening than not. And when Woj says something like that, when Woj says a deal is closer to happening than not, that carries enormous weight because Woj doesn't speculate. Woj doesn't throw things against the wall. When Woj reports something, it's because somebody with direct knowledge of the situation told him. And so when those words came out of his mouth, the studio reacted accordingly. Stephen A. leaned forward, Shannon's eyes went wide, and the live chat started going absolutely crazy. And then Molly turns to the other insider, the Warriors beat reporter, and says, "Your turn, what are you hearing?" And this is where everything goes sideways, because the beat reporter, with equal confidence and equal conviction, says, and again I'm paraphrasing but capturing the substance, he says, "With all due respect to my colleague, that is not what I'm hearing from inside the Warriors organization. My sources, people who are directly involved in these discussions, are telling me that the conversations around Maxey have hit a significant wall. The Sixers asking prices astronomical. They want multiple first-round picks, they want young players, and they want salary filler that the Warriors are not willing to part with. I'm told that Dunleavy explored the possibility, but concluded that the cost of acquiring Maxey would gut the roster to a point where the move becomes counterproductive. As of right now, my understanding is that this deal is stalled and may not happen at all. And bro, the studio went silent for about 2 seconds, which on live television feels like an hour because everyone is processing the fact that 2 ESPN insiders just said completely opposite things on the same broadcast about the same topic. And Stephen A. is the first one to react, and you can see on his face that he's genuinely confused, not in a performative way, but legitimately confused because he trusts both of these guys. He's worked with both of them, he knows both of their track records, and he goes, hold on, I need to understand what's happening here, because I've got one of my colleagues telling me this deal is close, and another one of my colleagues telling me this deal is dead. Those cannot both be true. Somebody has the wrong information, and that's when it turned into what I can only describe as a live courtroom proceeding on national television, because Molly, to her enormous credit as a moderator, realized that this contradiction needed to be explored, not glossed over. And she started treating it like a cross-examination, going back and forth between the 2 insiders, pressing each one for specifics, for details, for anything that could help the audience determine who had the more accurate information. And she goes back to Woj first and says, "Can you be more specific about what you're hearing? What kind of framework are we talking about?" And Woj says, "I'm told the Warriors have discussed a package that includes multiple young players and future first-round picks, and that the Sixers have been receptive to the general framework. My source described the tone of the conversations as productive and forward-moving." And then Molly turns to the beat reporter and says, "You're saying the deal is stalled. Can you be specific about what the sticking point is?" And the beat reporter says, "The sticking point is the Sixers want a package that includes the Warriors' best young assets plus multiple unprotected first-round picks, and the Warriors are not willing to go that far. Dunleavy has a line, and the Sixers' demands are beyond that line. My source used the word impasse to describe where things stand." And now Stephen A. jumps in, and he's doing what Stephen A. does best in these situations. He's trying to be the judge, trying to weigh the evidence, trying to figure out whose sources are more reliable. And he says to Woj, "When was the last time your source gave you an update on this?" And Woj says, "Within the last 24 hours. And Stephen A. turns to the beat reporter and asks the same question, and the beat reporter says, "This morning." I spoke to my source this morning before the show, and now the studio is buzzing because there's a time element to this. If Woj's information is from 24 hours ago and the beat reporter's information is from this morning, it's possible that both are technically correct, that the deal was moving forward yesterday but hit a wall overnight. And Stephen A. picks up on this immediately and says, "Is it possible that something changed between yesterday and this morning? Is it possible that the negotiations were productive yesterday, but that the Sixers came back with demands this morning that changed the equation?" And Woj considers this for a moment and says, "That's certainly possible. Negotiations are fluid. Things can change quickly. But I would caution against assuming that an impasse means the deal is dead, because in my experience, impasses in NBA trade negotiations are often temporary. Both sides posture, both sides push for the best possible deal, and then they find middle ground." And the beat reporter fires back and says, "I understand that, but there's a difference between normal negotiating posture and a fundamental disagreement about value. And what I'm hearing is that this is the latter." The Warriors and the Sixers are not close on what Maxey is worth in a trade, and that gap may be too wide to bridge. And Shannon, who's been watching this back and forth with increasing fascination, finally jumps in and takes a side. He looks at the camera and says, "I'm going with Woj on this one, and here's why. Woj has been breaking NBA trades for over a decade. His track record speaks for itself, and when Woj says a deal is more likely to happen than not, I believe him." No disrespect to the beat reporter, but beat reporters hear what the organization wants them to hear. Front offices control the flow of information to their beat reporters. They leak what they want leaked. And if the Warriors want to create the impression that the deal is stalled, they tell their beat reporter that the deal is stalled, even if behind closed doors they're still working on it. That's NBA politics. That's how this works. And the beat reporter does not appreciate that characterization. You can see it on his face, and he pushes back, saying, "With all due respect, Shannon, I've covered this organization for years. I have relationships inside that building that go beyond what gets leaked to me. I'm not being fed a narrative, I'm reporting what I've been told by people who are directly involved in these conversations." And now, Stephen A. is caught in the middle of what is essentially a credibility battle between two of his own network's reporters, and he's trying to navigate it without alienating either one of them. And he says, "Look, I think both of you are reporting in good faith what your sources are telling you. The question is whether your sources have the complete picture, or whether they're each seeing a different piece of the same puzzle." And I'm sitting at home watching this, and I'm thinking, this is the most honest, raw, unscripted moment I've ever seen on ESPN, because usually these things are managed. Usually the network makes sure their reporters are on the same page before they go on air. And the fact that they let this contradiction play out live tells me that this caught them off guard too. And it's genuinely riveting television because I don't know who's right. And that uncertainty, that not knowing, is what kept me glued to the screen. And here's where I started doing my own analysis, because as someone who follows the Warriors closely, who follows the salary cap closely, who understands how Mike Dunleavy Jr. operates, I started evaluating each insider's information against what I know to be true about the situation. And here's what I came up with. First, the salary cap reality. Maxey is on a max contract extension. For the Warriors to acquire him, they would need to send back enough salary to make the deal work under the CBA, and that means including significant contracts in the trade package. And the Warriors don't have a lot of movable salary that they'd be willing to part with without destroying the roster. So the beat reporter's point about the deal potentially gutting the roster has merit. It's a legitimate concern. But here's the counterpoint. Dunleavy has shown in the past that he's willing to think creatively about salary matching. He's explored 3-team deals. He's looked at including draft picks to incentivize a third team to absorb salary. So the idea that the salary cap makes this impossible isn't necessarily true. It just makes it complicated. And complicated isn't the same as impossible. Second, the asking price. The beat reporter said the Sixers want multiple first-round picks and the Warriors' best young assets. And that tracks with how Daryl Morey operates, because Morey is famous for setting his price high and not budging. He did it with the James Harden situation. He did it with the Ben Simmons situation. Morey asks for the moon and waits until somebody is desperate enough to give it to him. But here's the thing. Morey also eventually makes deals. The Harden deal got done. The Simmons deal got done. Morey postures, but he also gets deals across the finish line. And if the Warriors are genuinely interested in Maxey, and Maxey fits their system as perfectly as everyone agrees he does, then Dunleavy is going to push as hard as he can to find common ground, even if the initial asks are far apart. Third, the system fit. And this is the part that makes me lean toward believing that this deal eventually gets done, regardless of the current impasse, because the fit is too perfect to ignore. The Warriors' motion offense is built for a player exactly like Maxey, a guard who can make decisions in real time, who can read screens and react, who can shoot off the catch and off the dribble, who plays with pace and intensity. And playing alongside Steph Curry, the offensive possibilities are almost unfair. You can't help off Curry to stop Maxey. You can't help off Maxey to stop Curry. And that backcourt gives the Warriors both a present, competing with Curry right now, and a future, Maxey taking over when Curry eventually retires. That kind of alignment between team need and player skill set is rare. And when it exists, front offices find a way to make deals work. And fourth, and this is the detail that ultimately swayed me, I thought about who benefits from each narrative. If the Warriors want the Sixers to think the deal is dead, if they want Morey to believe that Golden State has walked away from the table, that creates leverage. Because if Morey thinks the Warriors are done, he might start to worry that his best offer is disappearing, and he might come back with a more reasonable asking price. And the way you create that impression is by having it leaked to your beat reporter that the deal is stalled. That's NBA gamesmanship. That's negotiation tactics. And it's exactly what a smart executive like Dunleavy would do. So when I put all of that together, the salary cap creativity that Dunleavy has shown in the past, the fact that Morey always starts high but eventually makes deals, the near-perfect system fit between Maxey and the Warriors, and the strategic value of leaking that the deal is stalled, I come down on Wojci's side. I believe the deal is still alive. I believe the impasse is temporary, a negotiating tactic rather than a genuine breakdown, and I believe that when the dust settles, Tyrese Maxey is going to end up in a Golden State Warriors uniform. And I need to tell you what happened at the very end of the show, because this is the moment that confirmed my analysis and proved me right. In the final minutes of the broadcast, after all the back and forth, after the debate between the insiders, after Stephen A. tried to play judge and Shannon took Wojci's side, the beat reporter came back on screen for one final update, and his tone had changed. He was less certain than he had been earlier, and he said, and this is important, he said, "I want to clarify something. My source told me this morning that the deal was stalled as of this morning, but I've just received a text that suggests the two sides may have re-engaged in the last hour." I don't want to overstate this, but it's possible that the situation has evolved since I last reported, and Shannon leapt on that immediately. He turned to Stephen A and said, "You hear that? Re-engaged. Re-engaged. That means the deal isn't dead. That means Woj was right. The impasse was temporary. Just like I said, just like Woj said. This is happening. Stephen A. Maxey to the Warriors is happening. And Stephen A., who had been trying to stay neutral the entire segment, finally let his guard down and said, "I will say this, if both insiders are now indicating that conversations are ongoing, then the momentum is clearly in the direction of a deal. And if Tyrese Maxey ends up in a Warriors uniform alongside Steph Curry, running that motion offense, playing with that pace and that spacing, that might be the most dangerous backcourt in the NBA, and the rest of the league should be terrified." And that was how the show ended, not with a definitive answer, but with the scales tipped heavily in one direction. And I walked away from that broadcast believing three things. 1, Woj had the better information and was closer to the truth the entire time. 2, the beat reporter was reporting what the Warriors wanted him to report as a negotiating tactic. And 3, this deal is going to happen. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but the conversations are real, the fit is perfect, and both sides have too much incentive to let this fall apart. Maxey and Golden State running off Draymond screens with Curry on the weak side, playing in that motion offense that's built for exactly his skill set, eventually taking the torch from Curry and becoming the next face of the franchise. It's not a fantasy, it's the future. And we might have just watched the whole thing play out in real time on live television, with two insiders giving us a window into the messy, contradictory, chaotic reality of how NBA deals actually get made behind the scenes. Let me know in the comments who you believed, the insider who said the deal was close, or the one who said it was stalled. And more importantly, do you think Maxey ends up as a Warrior? Because after everything I watched yesterday and everything I analyzed last night, I'm putting my money on yes. Hit that like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm out, y'all.